in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect him.
I think this is Daniel saying that he supported Darius the Mede, who had just conquered Babylon and Belshazzar. Because I think they were friendly to the Jews, or more so than Belshazzar was.
Now then, I tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and then a 4th, who will be far richer than all the others.
So, in the previous chapter, we know that we're talking about the time frame of the Medo-Persian Empire moving into the Greek Empire. And so now we're getting the details of the Great War that was mentioned in Daniel chapter 10, which is the purpose for this whole vision, to explain the Great War to Daniel that was coming during the time of the Persian Empire moving into the Greek Empire. So we have 3 Persian kings followed by a richer 4th Persian king.
When he has gained power by his wealth, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king will arise, who will rule with great power and do as he pleases.
Okay, so this 4th rich Persian king has decided that he can go up against Greece. But there is a mighty king who is Alexander the Great, the Greek great king Alexander. He has great power, and he does whatever he wants.
After he has arisen, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 winds of heaven.
Okay, so after Alexander the Great died, some of his officers and commanders set up different kingdoms. In the south was the Egyptian Ptolemaic kingdom, spelled with a P-T-O-L, Ptolemaic. And then in the north, or north of Jerusalem, you had the North Kingdom described in this war, or it was also called the Seleucids, the Seleucid Kingdom. So we're talking about the 6 Syrian wars between the Ptolemaic Kingdom and the Seleucid Kingdom.
It will not go to his descendants, nor will it have the power he exercised, because his empire will be uprooted and given to others.
The his in this verse is Alexander the Great. When Alexander the Great's Greek empire is broken up and is given to other people, it's not even his descendants, but his commanders and chiefs and that sort of thing, to form the Seleucid and Ptolemaic empires.
The king of the south will become strong.
So the king of the south is the Egyptian king, or the Ptolemies. They call themselves Ptolemies. So the king of the south is Egypt. The king of the north is Syria, or the Seleucids.
But one of his commanders will become even stronger than he, and will rule his own kingdom with great power.
Now, I've been looking at Matthew Henry's commentary on Daniel chapter 11, and he presents detailed explanations with people's names and how history perfectly lines up with Daniel chapter 11. So if you want the details of who each person is, who all these kings were, and how they gave their daughters and wives or daughters to try to either take over a kingdom or to create peace, it outlines all the details in Matthew Henry's commentary of Daniel chapter 11.
After some years, they will become allies. The daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to make an alliance, but she will not retain her power, and he and his power will not last. In those days she will be betrayed, together with her royal escort, and her father and the one who supported her. One from her family line will arise to take her place. He will attack the forces of the king of the north and enter his fortress. He will fight against them and be victorious. He will also seize their gods, their metal images, and their valuable articles of silver and gold, and carry them off to Egypt.
All right, so you can go to Wikipedia and type in the 6 wars of Syria, or 6 Syrian wars, and it talks about, in this time frame, from like 270 BC to 170 BC, so we're talking about a 100-year time frame. This is long after Daniel lived in the 5th century, but yet before Jesus came, and about between 170 to 270 BC. The wars for Syria, the transition from the Medo-Persian Empire to the Greek Empire.
For some years he will leave the king of the north alone. Then the king of the north will invade the realm of the king of the south, but will retreat to his own country.
And the reason that you had 6 wars of Syria in this time frame is because of this very thing. The north and the south, or Seleucids and Ptolemies, they would invade. They would either win or lose or retreat, and then there'd be a little bit of time pass, and then the other one would decide he wanted to do the same thing. So it was just this back and forth battle between the Seleucids and Ptolemies during this period. And this is in the Greek Empire. This is after Alexander the Great. We're in the Greek Empire now.
His sons will prepare for war and assemble a great army, which will sweep on like an irresistible flood and carry the battle as far as his fortress. Then the king of the south will march out in a rage and fight against the king of the north, who will raise a large army, but it will be defeated.
So it's not about the size of the armies who determines the winner. It's actually God who determines the winner. God is here prophesying to Daniel what is going to happen, the details of the Seleucid and Ptolemaic empires, about how they're going to go to war, they're going to be at peace, one's going to invade the other with an even larger army, but he's not going to be victorious. These things are all set in stone. They're prophesied, they're guaranteed to happen. God said it was going to happen, and he ensured that it did happen.
When the army is carried off, the king of the south will be filled with pride and will slaughter many thousands.
And you say, well, I wonder why God does that. Why does God prophesy the details of Gentile nations fighting with each other, being ridiculous and idolatrous? And why does God give one the victory and then turn around and give the other one the victory? Well, remember, we had just, during the Babylonian Empire, talked about how God made a point to Nebuchadnezzar that God is in charge of kingdoms. God appoints whoever he wants as king whenever he wants, and he takes away the power of anybody whenever he wants. So the whole point is to show that God is sovereign, that God is actively engaged in the details and affairs of men, that he appoints leaders in kingdoms and rulers, and that he takes away from whoever he wants whenever he wants. That's the point of all this in Daniel.
Yet he will not remain triumphant, for the king of the north will muster another army, larger than the first, and after several years he will advance with a huge army fully equipped. In those times many will rise against the king of the south.
Now, I was just remembering that when I first tried to look up a commentary on Daniel chapter 11, I found some guy that wanted to say that this whole chapter is talking about every kingdom and battle in the Middle East from the time of Daniel until the current 2018 to try to support his premillennial rapture idea. But to me, this is obviously describing a battle between the Seleucids and Ptolemies during the Greek Empire. And it does not extend to current times.
Those who are violent among your own people will rebel in fulfillment of the vision, but without success.
All right, so when he says your people, that's the Jews. Those who are violent among your own people. So the violent Jews rebel without success.
Then the king of the north will come and build up siege ramps and will capture a fortified city.
Now, I don't know if this fortified city is Jerusalem or some other city, but we know that they also take Jerusalem, so I don't know specifically if this is talking about Jerusalem or not.
The forces of the south will be powerless to resist. Even their best troops will not have the strength to stand. The invader will do as he pleases. No one will be able to stand against him. He will establish himself in the beautiful land and will have the power to destroy it.
Now, the beautiful land is certainly Jerusalem and Israel. Jerusalem and Greater Jerusalem.
He will determine to come with the might of his entire kingdom and will make an alliance with the king of the south. And he will give him a daughter in marriage in order to overthrow the kingdom. But his...
So we already had an example, I believe, of the king of the south sending a daughter up to the king of the north to get married, I believe, to create peace. But here we have an example of the king of the north sending a daughter down to the king of the south, but with the purpose was to overthrow the kingdom. So he's a little more ruthless, maybe.
plans will not succeed or help him. Then he will turn his attention to the coastlands and will take many of them. But a commander will put an end to his insolence and will turn his insolence back on him. After this, he will turn back toward the fortresses of his own country, but will stumble and fall to be seen no more. His successor will send out a tax collector to maintain the royal splendor.
So I guess with all the wars and fighting, they had spent a lot of their money, so they needed to raise the taxes so that the king could have a more luxurious lifestyle. Now that sounds like things that still happen today.
In a few years, however, he will be destroyed, yet not in anger or in battle.
Now in Matthew Henry's commentary, I looked this one up. Whoever this was talking about, and he suggests what his name was, says that he was poisoned, I believe, by his own mother or someone in his household. So in a few years, however, he would be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. So he didn't die in battle. He died to poisoning, which could be a little closer tied to anger, I guess. But
he will be succeeded by a contemptible person.
All right, so this contemptible person is suggested to be Antiochus Epiphanes. He was a king of the north who specifically fits the descriptions given here. During the Greek Empire, the portion of the Seleucid Empire, which was the Syrian area, or the North Kingdom, north of Jerusalem.
Who has not been given the honor of royalty.
See, he took the king by deception, the kingship or the kingdom by deception. He wasn't appointed by the state. He took it by deception, and Matthew Henry explains that.
He will invade the kingdom when its people feel secure, and he will seize it through intrigue. Then an overwhelming army will be swept away before him. Both it and a prince of the covenant will be destroyed.
Now, I think this covenant's talking about the Jews again. So, it's saying that a prince of the covenant will be destroyed. I think it's talking about a person, but it may be talking about something larger than a person.
After coming to an agreement with him, he will act deceitfully, and with only a few people, he will rise to power. When the richest provinces feel secure, he will invade them and will achieve what neither his fathers nor his forefathers did. He will distribute plunder, loot, and wealth among his followers. He will plot the overthrow of fortresses, but only for a time. With a large army, he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south. The king of the south will wage war with a large and very powerful army, but he will not be able to stand because of the plots devised against him.
So this contemptible new leader of the north, which is Antiochus Epiphanes, he's planning to go in on the south, but the south seems to be prepared for him, but I believe the south is overwhelmed.
Those who eat from the king's provisions will try to destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall in battle. The two kings, with their hearts bent on evil, will sit at the same table and lie to each other.
Now these two kings are the king of the north and the king of the south. Antiochus Epiphanes from the north, and whoever the king of Egypt was at this time.
But to no avail, because an end will still come at the appointed time.
So we know that God has appointed times for things to happen. And when it says an end will still come at the appointed time, some people want to necessarily conclude that this means the end of all life on earth. And that's certainly not what it's talking about. It's talking about the end of the Jewish age, most likely. Or it could even be talking about just simply the end of the Greek Empire. So this is internal fighting between two segments of the Greek Empire, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. So don't assume that the end here means the end of all life on earth. It's most likely talking about the end of a war, or the end of an era, or the end of a kingdom.
The king of the north will return to his own country with great wealth, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant.
All right, so Antiochus Epiphanes' heart would be set against the Jews, the Jewish covenant.
He will take action against it and then return to his own country.
So he's going to persecute and torment Jews and the Jewish way of life.
At the appointed time, he will invade the south again.
So the appointed time by God, whenever God decided that it would happen, it was going to happen. God said this horrible, evil king of the north is going to go in on the horrible king of the south on such and such day.
But this time the outcome will be different from what it was before. Ships of the western coastlands will oppose him, and he will lose heart.
So when Antiochus Epiphanes first went down into Egypt, he was victorious. This time he decided to go down again, but he lost heart. He had more difficulty.
Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the holy covenant.
So he takes out his rage against the Jews.
He will return and show favor to those who forsake the holy covenant.
So the Jews who give up their Jewish lifestyle, he rewards. The Jews who did not give up their Jewish lifestyle, he punished and killed and tormented.
His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice.
So he also invaded the Jewish temple, and he put an end to daily sacrifice. Now, if you look back at Daniel chapter 9, Daniel also talked about there would be a time where the sacrifices would be ended, but I feel like it's talking about two different things. I believe Daniel 9 is talking about the eternal cessation of all sacrifice in the temple in 70 AD. And here it may be talking about a temporary cessation of sacrifices, because Antiochus Epiphanes did not destroy the temple. He only invaded the temple, set up an idol inside it, and prevented the Jews from doing what they were supposed to do with the temple for a period of time, and it could have been about 3.5 years.
Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation.
So Daniel also talked about the abomination of desolation, I believe, in another place. And I have thought before that the abomination of desolation was something that maybe Caligula or one of the Roman Caesars set up an idol inside the temple. But here it seems that Antiochus Epiphanes set up an idol inside the temple. It was the abomination of desolation. Now, it's possible that both of those things are true. Maybe a Roman king set up an idol in the Jewish temple, and so did a Greek king, Antiochus Epiphanes. Either one of them or both of them would be abomination that causes desolation. So I don't know if they're talking about the same event or two different events. But I guess it seems to me that it's two different events. I believe the Roman Caesar did it, and Antiochus Epiphanes also did it.
With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant, but the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned or captured or plundered. When they fall, they will receive a little help, and many who are not sincere will join them. Some of the wise will stumble so that they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time.
Okay, here again, the time of the end will come at the appointed time. So God appoints the times for all these things to happen. And what is the end, or the end of what is coming? Could be the end of the Greek kingdom, could be the end of the Jewish age, but I don't think we're talking about the end of all life on earth, which some people seem to think is the only option there.
The king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god.
We're still talking about Antiochus Epiphanes. This is what he did.
And will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place.
Because God sets things in order, and they're going to take place no matter what. So God was using Antiochus Epiphanes for the purpose that he had in store for him, to fill up the measure of wrath that he had appointed for him. And God is deeply involved in the intimate details of life and kingdoms and rulers and peasants.
He will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the one desired by women, nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all. Instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god unknown to his ancestors. He will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god, and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him.
Now I have a little bit of an issue with the way this says he will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. Now, there is no other God. There is only one God. It is the God of the Jews, or the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, this phrase, he will be mighty and attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign God. I believe he did it with the help of the one and only true and living God, but God was using him to store up wrath and punishment for him and his activities. So it's kind of a perspective thing, how you look at it.
He will make them rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price. At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle, and the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and cavalry and a great fleet of ships.
So again, the end of what? This could be the end of Antiochus Epiphanes' life, or the end of the Jewish persecution, or the end of the cessation of sacrifices offered in the Jewish temple, which all those things, some of those things would be overlapping. If Antiochus Epiphanes dies and they remove the idol, the abomination of desolation put inside the Jewish temple, most holy place, and they restore sacrifices, then that would be the end of the Jewish persecution under Antiochus Epiphanes.
He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land.
Jerusalem.
Many countries will fall, but Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon will be delivered from his hand. He will extend his power over many countries. Egypt will not escape. He will gain control of the treasures of gold and silver and all the riches of Egypt, with the Libyans and Cushites in submission. But reports from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in a great rage to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch his royal tents between the seas at the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him.
So Antiochus Epiphanes would become very powerful. He would persecute the Jews and the Jewish religion and the Jewish way of life. He would take over the temple, set up the abomination of desolation, and prevent sacrifices from continuing, the Jewish sacrifices from continuing in the Jewish temple. He would overcome the South when it was all said and done, but then he was going to be defeated. He would come to his end, and no one would help him. So maybe this is the end we were talking about.